Now, if you guys watch my content, you know that I spend a pretty significant amount of time talking about climate change and things relating to it. Even in non-dedicated segments, which I feel like I do a lot more of than, honestly, I can't think of any other left-wing like streamer people that do as much content about climate change as I do, and it doesn't really get a lot of attention, to be fair, and that's kind of a factor in this discussion we're about to get into here in a moment. But, you know, regardless, I'm pretty passionate about climate change, you know? I've always looked at it as a, you know, sort of an existential threat, like sort of a Game of Thrones scenario where, you know, climate change is the long night. There is like the Minecraft darkness effect, the blindness effect, and zombies coming to kill us all, and we're all focused, like, on completely unrelated, unimportant bullshit in comparison, that when there's like something way more existentially important and broadly affecting of everyone that's like looming. I really care about climate change. In fact, some of my content lately has been pretty focused on the hurricanes that have been happening and talking about how they're a big problem, talking about the fires, the droughts, the massive snowstorms and deep freezes in parts of the country that are not meant to get that cold, and the infrastructure is not made for it because it's never been that cold before. I've been going into this a lot, right? So I want you guys to know, and I think most of you already do going into this, but there could be some new viewers here, that I am not anywhere close to a climate skeptic. Climate change is real. I should clarify, man-made climate change is real, and it is an existential threat. That is not like, you know, a problem for the future. It's a problem right fucking now. Like, there's no more, in 10 years, this is going to be underwater. In 5 years, that's going to be arid and no longer farmable land. It's now. It's happening now. Like, it's currently going down. There's no more ignoring it. There's no more putting it off or waiting for it to get worse, because it is at the critical point where it's so bad that it's worse now. I mean, look at the hurricane damage that's happened, right? Like, a lot of people have died. A lot of property has been damaged. That's going to cost a lot to repair. And I assure you, before they've repaired it, the next massive hurricane will have come through to undo that damage. We're there now. It's happening. It's not a, it's gonna happen. It's happening. And I mean that fully. And it's only going to get worse. There's not going to be any lulls or chill points or waves. Like, it's not fluctuating. It's all just increasingly worse at a fast rate. So, with that in mind, you may be surprised that I consider the actions of the group Just Stop Oil. They are a British/European anti-natural gas advocacy group. I consider not most of, but a lot of the political action of Just Stop Oil pretty cringe and unproductive. Now, I'm obviously not referring to, like, picket lines, marches, or even the potential destruction of politicians' private property. Politicians, I should say, that work to prevent climate reform policies. You know, I'm not just saying I'm not against it. I'm not in favor of it, YouTube and the law, but I'm not against it. You know, just saying. You know, I'm allowed to have my opinions. But that is not what Just Stop Oil is known for. Just Stop Oil gets the most attention by far for their stunts. And a lot of their stunts range from nothing really all that serious. Like, at one point, they attempted to spray their orange paint on Taylor Swift's private jet. I forget how much it is, but, like, apparently Taylor Swift's private jet, like, just for one of her, like, Eras tours, produces as much, greenhouse gases as, like, 1 million people do in a week or something like that. It's, like, an insanely, massively polluting thing compared to, like, the average pollution produced by, like, a single person. And that's just her private jet, right? So obviously a lot of people on the left kind of consider Taylor Swift a little bit of, like, a fake progressive when, you know, she's, like, endorsing Biden, super, you know, known for her progressive beliefs, but at the same time she pollutes more than, you know, most people could ever do in their lives in, like, one tour or whatever. Like, it's something like that insane. Like, the private jet does a lot of pollution. It's not like it's only like a drop in the bucket, but it's not great. Anyway, that's not what Just Stop Oil is really known for. Just Stop Oil is known for primarily their destruction of property. And I don't mean like private property that's like belonging to politicians behind the blocking of, climate reforms. Like, I'm not talking targeted attacks on the property of people who are responsible for the government of, in this case, the UK, not doing enough about climate change. Instead, they do things like this, where they failed to vandalize a Van Gogh piece, or where they sprayed orange starch on Stonehenge. Like, the only reason they do these things, and I know because I've listened to their speakers and members speak now, the only reason they do these things are the following. They want to keep climate change in the news as much as possible. Now, I actually watched a really good video by a guy named Tom Nicholas. He's not perfect. He is friends with Hassan and a couple of other, like, cringe, tanky YouTubers. But he did a good video where he infiltrated this group. Infiltrated, quote-unquote. He talked to the people there, and then he went with them when they did one of their attempts at a big, call to attention, right? They do these things that are meant to anger people and provoke right-wing media outlets, right? Because, Fox News can't resist this. Sky News, whatever right-wing outlets you can think of, they can't resist talking about this and turning it into a big thing, right? But they are getting climate change in the news, right? And that's their explanation. That's their logic. I actually watched this entire video. I've already seen the entirety of it. We're going to watch a bit of it ourselves, but not anywhere near all of it. And I'm going to steel man Just Stop Oil as much as I can. But I'm also going to maintain my position that they are cringe, but I'm going to add to my take, and I think my take now is going to be a lot better, despite still having the same position at the end of the day, because now I know more about these people. Apparently, supposedly, now granted, Tom Nicholas is not a 100% reliable source, considering, some of the company he keeps is definitely a little sus, but regardless, according to him, there is no foundation in the idea that Just Stop Oil is funded by or run by people with connections to the oil industry. There has been a long-running theory, particularly by people on the left, because of how negative the reception of Just Stop Oil is pretty much unanimously. There's been a conspiracy that Just Stop Oil is funded by oil companies. I feel like that kind of speaks to a lot of my point, by the way. The fact that, lefties found their activism so cringe and counterproductive that they were like, please let this just be some oil company-funded psyop. Please. I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I think these people are genuine. And we're going to watch some clips from this video. And I imagine some of you will be steadfast in your support for Just Stop Oil, which... you're allowed to have your opinion. I don't really care, honestly. But I imagine a lot of you are going to perhaps get a bit more of an insight into what they do, and I don't think it's going to make your opinion any more positive for the most part, for most of you. At least it doesn't make my opinion on them any more positive, but I definitely understand why they do what they do better now, even if I don't agree with it. Their claim is that the anger that people have towards them is at least attention that is going at least tangentially to the climate issue. So let's watch a bit of this video and see his experience going undercover to do a stunt of vandalism with Just Stop Oil and see what they're like and what they're about. Let's see if I was wrong about Just Stop Oil.
You're watching Sky News, Gareth Barlow with you. I just want to remind you of some breaking developments that have happened in the last 10 to 15 minutes or so. These are Just Stop Oil protesters. We can show you this footage now. And you can see these two women. They're about to remove a hammer and chisel there. You can see and hear the strikes of that hammer against the chisel head.
Okay, so I guess I need to do some explaining, and maybe some apologising. As the nice news presenter's just been saying, these two ladies over here, Sue and Judy, are Just Stop Oil protesters, who are attempting to smash the glass surrounding Magna Carta, one of the most...
By the way, if you're wondering why a lot of what they do is vandalizing art, like a lot of what they're known for is if there's like a play or a concert or some kind of big event, they might crash it, like run on stage and start like fucking stuff up, getting in the way of the event, just kind of just ruining it, like stopping the event so people can't enjoy it. And their tagline for why they do that is the quote, "There was no art in a dead world." And so a lot of their activism involves destroying art because you cannot enjoy art if climate change happens and we all become extinct and the world gets destroyed. I feel like most of you guys know why that's just really bad and cringe by me simply saying it. They target art because they believe there will be no art in a dead world, so they destroy it and ruin it for people to send that message. I swear to God, someone stop me from Fed posting. My historian ass cannot take this. Well, you're going to see them claim here, the Just Stop Oil activists arguing that they're actually the next generation of radical activists, and that they're actually representing the idea of the Magna Carta more than it does. And that's also part of why they're going to vandalize it. They'll explain it all. I'll let them speak for themselves. I don't want to mischaracterize them.
Important documents in the history of Western democracy. And this gormless blob floating into shot? Well, yeah, that's me. Sorry for spoiling the view. This moment of symbolic criminal damage was the adrenaline-filled high point of a tense 24 hours I spent in the company of the UK's most controversial climate protesters. My goal? To try and understand what drives campaigners to engage in this kind of action.
Okay, I don't know if I'll remember or end up getting to show the clip, but it's the clip from this video that stuck with me the absolute most. At one point, he's interviewing a member of Just Stop Oil, and the member says, "It really sucks that there's nothing else the working class can do to have an impact on the way our government does things." I am very glad that Tom Nicholas then proceeds to say, "Except, Britain just got a new government after the new round of elections. In fact, the new elected officials are far more amenable to climate change policies than any that have been elected before." He goes on to like explain that actually voting exists, and as a matter of fact, there was just an election, and the new politicians that just took power are far more pro-climate change action than any that have come before. Because as that one girl that he interviews actively indicated she doesn't believe in with her words, they don't believe that voting is a valid way to have an impact. They like a lot of the people who join these groups are the kind of people that, like I argued before, Hassan, markets to. The kind of people who believe voting is like a rigged system, and that the only way to have any change in the world or any impact is to be a LARPer. And to get as much attention as possible, and to be more than anything, and this will become a very running theme for Just Stop Oil protesters, as you're about to see, is martyrdom. They all want to be martyred. That is a very much a running theme.
What it takes to pull off such a stunt, and whether or not attacking old documents is really likely to bring about a change in the government's climate policy. Answering those questions has involved entering a world of encrypted messaging, code names, secret cameras, and endless arrests. It's involved speaking with a range of folks with various relationships to and thoughts about Just Stop Oil's activism.
If you're wondering, this is the girl who said that there's nothing else that the working class can do to make change besides these acts of destructive protest. There's no other way, guys. There's just no other way.
Range of folks with various relationships to and thoughts about Just Stop Oil's activism, and it's required delving into some of the growing body of academic research surrounding why some political movements succeed in achieving their aims, whilst others fail. One caveat to all of this. Whilst this video is going to involve some debate surrounding the political tactics of Just Stop Oil, one thing is not up for question. According to the United Nations Environment Programme, the planet
One thing I will praise them for, that this is a very base level of praise. As far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, but as far as I'm aware, no Just Stop Oil protester has ever laid a finger on anybody. It is very common that people physically lay their hands on them to try to stop them from destroying like works of art that typically they're there to see, like Stonehenge. Like if you're a guest there to see Stonehenge and someone starts fucking with it like that, you might step in and be like, "Yo, stop, I came here to see this," you know? And so they get their like hands laid on them often, and they do nothing in response. That's part of their like rules and their way of doing things, is that they expect for the cops, for employees, security guards, and random people to physically, maybe even assault them. And that part of their movement's goal is to do nothing in response. Like if they get hit, they want to be caught on video not doing anything, and they want to be martyred, right? Part of it is obviously they don't want to go to jail and be charged with anything illegal, but they also want to be martyred. Like if they can get a video of a bunch of people beating them up and them not hurting anyone, then they want that video. They want that to exist.
Live On is presently on track to hit a devastating 2.9 degrees Celsius of global warming this century. Such a world would...
I don't like the way that a lot of climate scientists and climate activists talk about the dangers of climate change. Nobody gets what that means. 2.9 degrees Celsius average increase in global temperature by set date. That doesn't mean anything to the majority of people. What does mean something to people is, okay, so yeah, you know how like 10 years ago, the hurricanes that have been normal for the last 2 years in Florida were like once every 100-year storms? You know how they're like once a month storms now? That's not normal, and that's like a small symptom of like the beginning of the world-ending effects of climate change. Like this is like we've now entered the apocalyptic phase of it. Like we're at the start of the apocalypse phase, and this is just like the best, least shitty part of the apocalypse phase. We're in that least shitty area now, and it only gets worse from here. We only get deeper into apocalypse phase now. Like, I think that's a way more effective and frankly accurate way to depict the state of climate change than like the way it's talked about with this like hyper technical. Nobody besides climate scientists and very, very educated people know how severe a 2.9 Celsius average increase in global temperatures is. It is catastrophic, by the way, like so fucking bad, like insanely bad, like end of the world bad, like deadly heat strokes every summer, millions dead a year from heat strokes every summer. That's how bad it is. Doesn't sound like a lot to the layman, but it's that apocalyptically bad.
Would be one of extreme, widespread and regular heat waves, one in which much of the Maldives, the Seychelles, Amsterdam and New Orleans have disappeared under rising seas, and in which hundreds of millions...
Dude, you guys know like Venice is flooded like most of the year. Hold on, let me see if I can bring up some Venice floods. Excuse me. Like, this is Venice on a regular basis now. It's been a constant problem, but it's only getting worse at an escalating rate. It's not that, like, it's quickly getting bad. It's that the rate of its getting bad is escalating and getting faster over time. Like, the rate of worsening is getting faster as time goes by. And so we're probably, like, a decade away from like Venice vacations being something that are only done by boat. Like, legitimately, they're having to build temporary infrastructure to deal with the constant rising waters. And mind you, this is a town built on canals. So imagine you're just like, they have to build these because people will walk off of the edge of the canals and just fall into like 9-foot deep water or whatever, you know? Like, because it's only knee deep here. But then if this is the edge of a canal, you wouldn't know. You'd walk into it and it's like, woo! Sunk to the bottom because you just took a step. It's like stepping off of a sandbar when you're at the beach. And then here's another image of what it's like. Like, it's bad, guys. Like, we're there now. It's happening now. It's not a thing of the future anymore. For so long, we had this like unfortunate. Well, it's been fortunate in a way, but unfortunate, uphill battle of having to swear on our lives. It's gonna get bad, guys. It's bad now. If you deny that it's bad, then you're, I guess, anti-humanity. Like, you don't believe that hurricanes are real. Like, there are conspiracy theorists that are at that point now, but the stats, even in America, show that there's a pretty strong favorability towards a belief in man-made climate change. We've kind of already won the war of convincing people it exists as much as it can be, but people, even who are convinced that it's real, aren't fully convinced that it is as imminent of a threat as it is. Like, people know it exists, but people don't get how big of a problem it is.
Millions of people would be displaced from their homes. If we want to avoid such a calamitous scenario, the question is not if we stop using oil and other fossil fuels, but when we do so. And our speed or hesitancy here will have a direct link to how many lives we're able to save. As things stand, neither government...
Here, I do want to skip around this video a lot because it's so fucking long. There's a particular part of it that is probably the best part of it to watch. Yeah, here it is. This is when they go to try and destroy the Magna Carta.
Things might be about to get going.
I have seen the Magna Carta.
I found myself a spot where I could be ready to follow Sue and Judy into the Magna Carta room the moment they leapt into action. And before long, they did. As Sue and Judy ambled through the exhibition, I set my iPhone recording and followed along. Now, you might assume that one of the foundational documents of the British Constitution might have a security guard stationed permanently by its side. But it doesn't. There is a camera on the ceiling, but the fact Magna Carta is situated in a side room away from the rest of the exhibits means that unless a member of staff happens to wander into that room on their rounds, it's kind of tucked away from view. This gave Sue and Judy ample time to make their preparations. They put down their bags, took a moment to gather their emotions, and then Judy...
What will be the rights narrative once Venice and other countries, or states like Florida, I should add, go away? It'll be the same as what Marjorie Taylor Greene did. They'll find a way to blame Jews and Democrats and minorities. It'll be like, oh, these wildfires aren't because of climate change. They're because of Jewish space lasers. They'll find a way. Like, they'll acknowledge the disasters, and they'll find a way to actually blame it on us.
Judy took off her jacket to reveal her Just Stop Oil t-shirt. Then, as Sue held the chisel in place, Judy began to hammer. But what's it like to perform an action like this? We hear a fair bit from media commentators on the impacts of Just Stop Oil's stunts, but what emotions are running through activists' heads as they pull off one of these audacious actions? Even being present in the room, knowing that Sue and Judy were about to pull off their demonstration, I was absolutely pranging out.
It's not
Never
a replica,
has a man
no, it's the
sweated
original.
so much whilst watching a video of William Hague.
Sue and Judy, on the other hand, were looking endlessly calm. Judy had even come up and said good morning.
It was hard to imagine that they were about to not only start causing commotion in a crowded room, but perform an act of criminal damage for which they knew they would be arrested and then carted off to a police station.
In order to get a better sense of what it's like to perform a stunt like this, I met up with Hanan Amur, a JSO supporter who's taken part in a couple of actions with the group to date.
My name is Hanan Amur, and outside of
this
this,
is
I
the
am a
conversation I was
student.
talking
I'm
about.
currently studying robotics at London Met, so yeah, I want to be an engineer one day, software and hardware. I've taken 2 cultural actions. I disrupted Les Mis, found guilty quite recently actually for that. I also broke the glass.
Yeah, they do that a lot. They like to disrupt concerts and plays. Basically just the kind of... There's nobody who likes this, you know? Like, there are some super hyper-radical leftists that like this, but even among, like, left-leaning climate change-believing people, it's always like, yeah, but we're not like those Just Stop Oil people. We're not associated with them. And there are actually countless other climate change organizations that have called out Just Stop Oil. They're not just controversial broadly. They are controversial within the world of organizations that fight against climate change. In fact, there are numerous organizations whose entire tagline is about quote-unquote mainstreaming climate change action. Basically, their entire goal is to get as many people as possible involved in fighting against climate change. That is what they are all about. That is their motto and their creed. And these are the organizations that primarily call out Just Stop Oil. So I want to be very clear here. It is not just random people on the internet, random grillers and conservative pundits that have been calling out Just Stop Oil's actions for being counterproductive, but a large swath of other climate change activist groups, particularly much larger ones and more populated with members ones than Just Stop Oil, because they're simply more effective. The main criticism is, no matter how much you agree with the idea of what they're doing here, it's not having the effect that you're going for, right? And if that's what matters at the end of the day, is the effect, then yeah, like they claim, oh, we're keeping climate change in the news. No, you're not. No one that talks about this is talking about climate change. If anything, it's distracting from a conversation about climate change. We're not talking about climate change. We're talking about how climate activists are going too far. Nothing about this makes people more knowledgeable, concerned, and willing to fight against climate change. If anything, it makes people view activism as the kind of thing people like this do. The kind of thing you should avoid, because you don't want to be seen like these people. You don't want to be around these people who are going to get you arrested and make you look like a fool to the entire world as every news station left and right besmirches you for trying to demolish a piece of art that people love.
Of the Rokeby Venus painting, so in the National Gallery, so I'm not allowed back there.
Her experience was that undertaking an action like this is an absolute whirlwind of different emotions.
The experience of taking a justable action is like none other, you know, it's like you feel like everyone knows what you're doing when, on the way there. You're like, oh my God, everyone knows, the security knows, the police know already.
You know, like I said before, I wouldn't have a problem with this organization if instead they were like, hey, insert British politician number 43 voted against this big climate change action bill. Let's go spray paint orange their car, their front yard, let's salt their yard and garden and like spray paint orange their car and their front yard and in front of their house. And they're willing to go to jail for private property damage, for trying to damage like works of art and museum property. Are they not willing to go to jail for like demolishing or fucking up the property of the politicians behind these problems, or the CEOs and executives that are behind this stuff? Like if they were doing this like destruction of property and terrorism type stuff, like soft terrorism type stuff against the people responsible, I don't think anywhere near as many people would be as upset. It's the fact that their way of activism is to destroy the fun of random people and to say, see, this is what will happen to everything you like if climate change wins. No one likes that. It reminds me of how there was a recent rash of road blocking protests, and people were like, what do you mean road blocking protests are one of the most unpopular form of protest that is popular in the United States? And like, I don't know why people choose to participate in that. Like, a famously unpopular form of protest, let's do it. No one likes it, and people even generally agree with our position, but we're going to protest for that position in a way that is statistically measured as the least effective. I don't know, man. I don't know how you can think this way or act this way and not see the blatant flaws.
But at the same time, you're very calm because it's just what needs to be done. You're in civil resistance now.
The night before,
I'm mad about a cause. I think I'll prevent an ambulance and fire truck from getting where they need to go. Well, there's that, but also the Just Stop Oil protesters openly say, word for word, part of why they glue themselves to the things that they destroy, so you'll see that in a moment, they super glue themselves, is to make the cops come and arrest them. They have to be removed by police, right? They want to get arrested. They don't want to just get escorted out by security, because that doesn't end up being on the news and stuff. And so what they say is that they do it so they could get arrested and get the attention of the arrest, but also because, and I quote, it wastes police time and resources. And remember, these folks also believe we need to like defund the police and the police are evil, and that any time they can waste a cop's time, it must be time that they would otherwise be harassing minorities or enforcing systemic racism, right? Not that these cops could, you know, be responding to like a violent call for help, or, you know, you could be blocking cops from being first responders at a scene where they need to be. No, you know, they're only doing bad stuff, and wasting their time and resources is always good, apparently. Obviously not. This is fucking stupid, hyper-lefty Hassan viewer logic, but hey, there's a reason why Hassan's the largest figure on the left. A lot of young people, and for some reason really old people based on this video, are into this stuff.
or Judy had confessed to feeling similarly anxious.
I'm feeling nervous, yes. It's not something I spend my time doing, smashing up national treasures, let's say that. No, I wouldn't. Nor I'm a terribly conventional person. I went to a convent school, I taught in a convent.
There's something also kind of fucked up about the idea of a climate change activism organization destroying works of art, beauty, or history, that, like, so future generations can't enjoy them, or at least that's their goal when they do these things, when, like, to do as much destruction to the thing as possible so it gets as much attention as possible. When meanwhile, that's like one of the big concerns about climate change, right? Like, one of the things I always heard growing up was, enjoy this nature while you can. It's not going to be the same when you grow up. And I never really took it that seriously as a little kid, because, you know, you think the world's going to stay the same forever. But then as, like, even a 16-year-old, I'd go back to the same places, and it's like, fuck, that was right. Like, it's happened. Like, it done happened. This is not the same place as I visited when I was 8. You know, like, that happened to me at a surprisingly young age. And now it's just gotten to be more and more true with every passing year. So the idea that, like, for me, one of the biggest wake-up calls about climate change being real was that I need to appreciate these, like, this natural beauty while it exists, because it's not going to exist when I get older. It's that is how short of a time I have to enjoy these things if things don't change. And frankly, when I was growing up, no one in my family telling me these things had any hope there would be change. So it was just, it's not going to be like this when you grow up. Just a simple statement of fact. And they were right. And so the idea that they would do that to man-made works of beauty, works of history, things that, you know, people want to see Stonehenge one day. People want to see, like, the Van Gogh original paintings in the museums one day. People want to see the Magna Carta, like the fundamental founding document of, of the British fucking Empire or whatever, or British democracy, I guess, not the Empire. The idea that you would destroy these things and deny future generations from seeing these things as anything other than videos, photos, and in history books, you're doing what climate change is doing. You know, it's like, it's weird. There's this weird, like, parallel, this like, there's two sides of the same coin between the evil of climate change and Just Stop Oil and what they do. It's almost like poetic.
Nevertheless, Hanan did suggest that there is something empowering about having the sense that someone is
Xanderhall, I thought you were homeless or something. Why?
doing something to resist government complacency on the climate crisis.
It's like you are non-compliant with anything, with your arrest, like all the way up from, you know, getting there, all the way up to the arrest. It's like non-compliancy. I know some people that have like had to be carried from their arrest into the police van, out of the police van, into the police station, and I think that attitude is
they do the dead weight thing.
The essence of taking these actions, which is just like non-compliance with a government that literally doesn't care.
I can't see inside their heads, but perhaps it was that same sense of empowerment and of taking action against inaction which powered on Sue and Judy as they began to crack Magna Carta's protective casing. I counted 13 whacks of the hammer before a security guard came over to intervene. Perhaps there's someone keeping an eye on the security cameras who had instructed them to head over, or perhaps a member of the public had told them what was going on. Maybe the almighty...
I don't know why they thought it was possible to break through ballistic glass with a hammer and chisel. Like, I'm pretty sure you could have, like, Thor Bjornsson, the previous world's strongest man, and the guy who played the Mountain in Game of Thrones, hammering away at with a hammer and chisel 3 times the size of those. I don't think he'd be able to break it. Maybe after a while, but, like, not in 15 hits, I don't think. Because you got to be a little, like, you can't fully just, like, hammer down. You got to be a little precise with these. So, I don't know why they even thought this was going to work, to be honest.
mighty racket the chisel was making was
it's
enough.
The thought that counts.
Either way, I'd assumed that every even vaguely prominent landmark in London would have a dedicated Just Stop Oil response plan by this point. A kind of code orange, if you will. The group's actions have been so widespread that they've got to at least know it's a possibility.
There's no way. Wait.
The group's action...
Is that a fucking ambulance? That looks like how, like, newer ambulances will look in America. I've seen ones that are like vans like this. I don't think it is, though. I thought it was an ambulance for a second. I was going to say, there's no way this is a video of them roadblocking an ambulance. That's an ambulance, yeah? Is it really? No shot. No. There's no way this is a video of them roadblocking an ambulance. There's no fucking way. There's no way that video exists. That'd be too perfect. It'd be too perfect of a point just made with a photo.
Have been so widespread that they've got to at least know it's a possibility.
Okay, no, it's a cop car. There were cops getting out of it.
The group's actions have been...
Look, see, those are cops. I don't think those are paramedics. These are cops arriving, I think.
So widespread that they've got to at least know it's a possibility.
I mean,
they
the
might
UK,
turn
that's not
up
the
one
ambulance.
day.
Yeah, it's
didn't
police.
seem to be the case. Instead, the initial reaction was largely one of confusion. In typically British fashion, the security guard first simply asked them what they were doing. But before long, it became pretty evident who they were and why they were here.
One of my biggest criticisms of Just Stop Oil is that they aren't even American. Like, yeah, they're pieces of shit, but they aren't even American. They are fucking European. I know, right? Like, why are they getting all like bent out of shape about this shit? They're fucking Britain. Like, they need to calm down. It's not that serious. They're not America. Like, nothing matters all that much. Like, it's chill out.
As he attempted to gain some control over the situation and call for some backup, Sue and Judy moved on to giving a brief
Pick a struggle. You can't be a piece of shit and European. Good God.
statement explaining why they'd done what they'd done.
As a Christian, I am compelled to do all that I can.
Can you stop doing that, please? Stop doing that, please, man.
The government is breaking the law.
alleviate the appalling suffering that's coming around the line and is here already. So we must
Stop doing that, please. Did you hear me?
What are you, a fucking liberal?
stop.
Yes, sister. Come to my cat over.
As a handful of bemused library visitors looked on, the pair calmly unfolded a pair of stools they'd brought with them, sat down, and began supergluing themselves to the exhibit. This is fairly standard practice for JSO stunts. It ensures activists can remain in place and forces whatever internal security team is working in a particular location to have to call the police to safely remove them. Given this meant they were unable to do much about Sue and Judy, the security team switched their focus to trying to clear the Magna Carta room of guests, and I was only too happy to oblige. Back in the main room, it was fascinating to observe the extent to which this big stunt both had and hadn't affected everyone's inbuilt understanding of how to behave in a library. On the one hand, a large proportion of folks present had gathered round to try and get a good look of what was going on. On the other, everyone remained firmly in hushed-voiced library mode. Watching the security team
That's
try
polite.
to block people's view
I mean,
of the
it's-
activists,
Dude, it's Britain. Like, no one's gonna speak up in a library. Like, dude, I think a British person could get, like, stabbed to death by Jack the Ripper in a library, and they would not dare to let their voice get so loud that the person in the row next to them could hear. You know, it's just... Say what you want about the British. They are very polite.
presumably in the hope that folks would move on, it was hard not to feel a deep sense of sympathy for the team. It was already the kind of boiling hot day which seems
That's
to
fucked.
break the souls of most Brits, and this had just turned into the shift from hell. All of which points to one of the major criticisms of Just Stop Oil's
Yeah,
tactics.
no, that's how Jack the Ripper got away with it, by the way. No one that he killed would scream, because you're not supposed to yell. That's unsightly, and that's a public disturbance. British people don't yell. So Jack the Ripper would never, like, his victims never screamed, so he always got away with it. It's that listen, the British may be polite, and politeness is a virtue, but it can also be a weakness.
There's obviously been some predictable pearl clutching from right-wing voices such as the presenters at GB News, who have regularly invited activists onto their shows to spy.
Trust me, that, like, as much as I don't like Just Stop Oil, you better believe the far right and just general conservative news outlets have used Just Stop Oil to push much more radically negative positions on them than I would even agree with. Most right-wing pundits use their stuff as like arguments for why climate activists as a whole should be criminalized and should have their rights to protest taken away. So for all of the hemming and hawing that I could do about Just Stop Oil, what I find to be the much more worrying thing, and what this video focuses on a lot towards the end, is the fact that a lot of these Just Stop Oil protesters have been charged with some pretty bullshit stuff. Like, even in the cases where they haven't taken any part in violating property or anything, they've been charged just for recording what's gone down with charges like conspiracy to start a public nuisance. Things that are basically, like, you've been charged for thinking about committing a public nuisance. And on top of that, the police will oftentimes drive them to police stations as far away as they can manage from where they got arrested, and then release them at like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. So they'll be really far from home, most likely. They won't have their car, most likely, because they got arrested and driven miles and miles and miles to another police station as far away as possible. And it's 2 a.m., so who can they call to give them a ride? It is part of the police and the government in the UK going beyond the bounds of their legal responsibility to vindictively punish these protesters. And I may think these protesters are cringe, and they're certainly breaking the law, but when the police and the government start overriding their actual, not First Amendment rights, they're not American, but their freedom of speech, the concept of being able to express yourself, I don't agree with it. I don't care if it's not America. You should still be free to record people throwing soup on a painting. That shouldn't get you arrested and then taken 50 miles to the furthest police station and then let go at 2 a.m. in the morning because they specifically wanted to take as long as possible and release you with the worst time that you could have, right? And that's been the experience of a lot of these protesters and many other protesters, part of other groups, right? This isn't just a Just Stop Oil thing. There's a bit here I wanted to show as well about Just Stop Oil's critics. That's not the conservative pundits, but instead it's about... Yeah, this is the crackdown on political activism segment, but I'm looking for the bit... Yeah, here we go. Does Just Stop Oil's activism work? This is where we actually give a platform to other climate change activist organizations that have called out and disagree with Just Stop Oil and see them as counterproductive.
In fact, alongside trying to give an insight into how Just Stop Oil pull off their actions, the key question I wanted to try and answer with this video is, does the disruptive form of non-violent protest, which is their modus operandi, work? We've already heard some differing thoughts on that in the abstract, but it would be silly to have that conversation.
Tom Nicholas is extremely favorable towards Just Stop Oil in this video. He's part of that part of the left, if you know what I mean. Like, if you look at like the content creators he collabs with and aligns with, you'll get what I mean. But overall, I think the video is really good, even if it's a little bit like naively sympathetic towards Just Stop Oil. However, this is the point in the video where I feel it gets a little more real. Like, it stops being so oversympathetic, and it actually does give a little bit of a platform to the criticisms that aren't from insane lunatics that want climate change activists arrested and killed.
Without at least acknowledging that JSO's core demand has, at least in principle, been met.
On the 4th of July 2024, the UK got a new government, and the incoming Labour administration have promised to join Denmark, France and Ireland in imposing a ban on the issuing of new licences for the drilling of oil and gas. Of course, how much of that decision can be attributed directly to Just Stop Oil is perhaps up.
Pretty much none, because this is a new government that got elected and ran on progressive policies, and people voted for progressive policies, particularly because the Tories and fucking Brexit and all of the bullshit that conservatives and British government have done for the last like 8, 9, 10 years or whatever has been absolutely fed up with by the British, it seems. Like the last like 10 years have been pretty cringe. I think we're probably seeing a little bit of a political swing in the UK, more likely than not. I'm popping my back. I hope so. I hope the UK sees a bit of a swing more towards progressive leadership. It seems like it's heading that way based on recent elections.
For debate. We've certainly seen that British politicians have, at least in public, been totally disparaging of the group's tactics. Net Zero Secretary Ed Miliband recently described their approach as disastrous in terms of persuading people to come to our cause.
Yeah, these are members of the new government. Institutions have been set up to help Britain achieve zero net emissions, which is, obviously what the goal is here. These are like the actual, the organizations within government that now exist as of very recently due to the election. That are outright saying, yeah, Just Stop Oil is one of the most destructive groups to the cause of climate change activism that there is.
Government. And the incoming Labour administration have promised to join Denmark, France and Ireland in imposing a ban on the issuing of new licences for the drilling of oil and gas. Of course, how much of that decision can be attributed directly to Just Stop Oil is perhaps up for debate. We've certainly seen that British politicians have, at least in public, been totally disparaging of the group's tactics. Net Zero Secretary Ed Miliband recently described their approach as disastrous in terms of persuading people to come to our cause. Nevertheless, it would be almost ludicrous to suggest that it wasn't at least a factor.
Perhaps unsurprisingly.
No argument made, by the way, for how it would be ludicrous to suggest that Just Stop Oil wasn't a factor in the new elected government being more progressive. Just implying it would be crazy to say they've had no effect. That's positive. Like I said, this video is kind of baselessly supportive of Just Stop Oil, but it does do a better job of breaking down the whole of the situation than I've seen anyone else do. Zan, David Tennant said that Rishi Sunak looks tired, and then the entire conservative wing of the UK came crumbling down. That is the true power of the Doctor. Real. Literally real. If they did an episode every season of Doctor Who about how awful the Tories are, the Tories would never win another election again. They'd have to rename their party.
James was keen to argue that Just Stop Oil had been a central part of setting the agenda here.
So one thing that we notice is that even when we're not taking action now, when oil and gas is spoken about, oftentimes you'll hear TV presenters using our talking points because basically we've been hammering a message.
I remember watching this video the first time and hearing this. This is a Just Stop Oil member claiming that climate activists and news like anchors that talk about climate change and believe in it repeat their talking points, meaning Just Stop Oil's talking points. Now, let me tell you why this immediately stood out to me as a bullshit claiming of credit. What talking points could you have originated about climate change? Because the talking points are data points and numbers and predictions by climate scientists. Just Stop Oil isn't an organization of climate scientists, it's an organization of activists. They don't have original talking points. If anything, they have found data presented by climate scientists, and they have made talking points out of the data, but they're not really original. You can't claim that news anchors saying that the Earth is going to warm a certain amount by this date is your talking point because you've used it. Like, what? I was going to say it's organization of dumb fucks, but I guess activist works. I don't think it's entirely accurate though. No, like I said, though, they're taking credit for supposedly their talking points becoming popular, as if they are the only climate change activism organization, and as if an activist organization could originate talking points about a climate issue that we only know about, well, we don't only know about, but we know the majority of information about because of climate scientists far more qualified than any of us. That's why we believe in it, is that we trust these experts. That argument stood on its face as weird to me, you know, and for that reason. Excuse me.
Again and again and again.
Examples of similar groups taking action in other countries only further suggests that direct action can, at least sometimes, get the goods. A Swedish sister group of JSO called Restore Wetlands recently declared victory on its demands that the government protect the country's endangered wetlands after a 2-year campaign of gluing themselves to highways. In 2023, the Netherlands chapter of Extinction Rebellion
So here's the big problem with this. Much like with Just Stop Oil, these activist organizations will take credit for anything, even if it's something that happened because of something they don't agree with. For example, seems like Just Stop Oil is not really big on encouraging their members to vote, considering none of the members refer to voting as a form of activism or a thing you can do to exert political power. And in fact, one of the members interviewed in this video says that there's nothing else you can do but this direct action stuff, as they call it. However, what's most likely happened is like progressive governments got elected in, like in the UK, and they took credit for it. When I hear direct action, I feel like I'm watching that DJ Mule video again. Yeah, especially when you hear it in a British accent.
Managed to force the government to launch an inquiry into fossil fuel subsidies. Back in the UK, JSO activists...
Direct action is a buzzword and a virtue signal, by the way. Direct action is a real thing in the world of, like, activism and stuff, but direct action is stuff like, you're either, like, outright engaging in terrorism against a fascistic government state, or you're, like, out there volunteering to directly improve people's lives. This is not direct action. This is LARPing.
Remained disappointed that the incoming Labour
direct action is a term that used to mean a real thing, and it still does technically, but internet lefties have, like, co-opted it to refer to their LARP. How many people do you know about that, like, tout how much direct action they do, and they have firebombed 0 Walmarts?
Government had stopped short of revoking the hundreds of new...
That's my favorite meme, by the way. Whenever someone says voting does nothing, and that if you only vote, you're just, you're doing nothing to affect change in the world, I always love when people simply reply, status of your local Walmart. It's my favorite meme. It's in reference to that one tweet where the person said, people really say voting has no impact, and the only way to make change is to firebomb your local Walmart, and then they won't firebomb their local Walmart. And so you always just reply, status of your local Walmart? Whenever some LARPy lefty talks about, voting not doing anything. The only LARPers we like are those in the Ren Fair. True.
New oil and gas licenses, which were issued in the final year of the outgoing Tory government.
It's a weird one, really, because the week that happened, we were like, oh, we've won. But beyond that, there was no kind of sense of
We won, guys. We did it. We did it, guys. We won. People voted and elected a new government into power. This new government must have different policies because they're listening to us. We won, guys. Our method is working.
Wanting to celebrate, really, because we know, and the science tells us that realistically this isn't enough. And the fact is that Labour haven't committed to ending all the oil and gas licenses that were greenlit by the Tories since 2021.
Along with allied organisations.
Oh, on top of that, most climate organizations recognize a actual path to eliminating carbon-producing fuel usage. Most climate organizations, I'm pretty sure the climate accords or the Green New Deal or whatever it was called, it was originally drafted, the points in it were originally drafted by a group of climate change activist organizations, awareness organizations, and it was adopted. Those policies, most of them were adopted into that, if I'm not mistaken. And so, don't get me wrong, activist organizations have had an impact before, but I must say these activist organizations typically have a plan. Just Stop Oil, you'll notice, is all about their catchphrase, just stop oil. Just flip the switch. Stop using oil right now. Why won't you just do it? The fact is you couldn't. In the case of America, we're exploiting a shit ton of oil, but on top of that, we still rely on oil for a lot of our energy production. As cool as it would be to just overnight replace it with green energy, that's not really possible. There's a reason why the most radical step taken to reach carbon neutrality was taken by Biden, and that is eliminating the coal industry by 2035. That's still a little while away. It's not as quick as I think is ideal, but it is the fastest that is possible. Unfortunately, the scientists and engineers couldn't make us not use oil anymore to a substantial degree, even within a year. It's the kind of thing that takes a long process of converting. Well, a lot of our energy production is done by private corporations. A lot of these private corporations have to somehow, some way, by the government, either be convinced or strong-armed into dropping fossil fuel as the thing they do, and to adopt green energy instead. This means retraining or rehiring new workers. It's a massive undertaking, literally forcing a vast array of companies, private corporations, huge ones, to change the thing that they do, full stop, to a whole new form of energy production. It's massive. It's a massive undertaking. It is not as simple as just stop oil. There's a reason why the reputable and legit activist organizations have plans, and they lobby multiple country governments into adopting their plans, and there was a big deal around Trump refusing to join in with that agreement. Hasn't it been proven that the USA government are hiding power solutions? Honest question. I've been seeing a lot of talk about this. I don't think so. As far as I know, I know that one of the big bottlenecks for green energy production has been storage, and that right now, we're rushing to find the next big technological step up in battery technology. From what I've heard, currently, two of the ideas that people have are big water tanks that would store energy somehow. I don't know the exact science, but they would just be giant water tanks that would act as batteries. And another theory was that you could use coiled copper and giant silos of sand, pure sand, and copper coils. These would be huge, by the way, but they would apparently act as extremely massive and efficient batteries. So that's been an idea that's been presented as a way to deal with it, but there's not really been a solution so good it's been fully implemented, and we're on our way to solving the problem yet. We're still very much looking for the next big step in battery tech. They're working on sodium batteries. There's a lot of things I've heard about, the sand thing, the water thing, sodium batteries. There's a lot of ideas. Hell, they're talking about fusion technology and stuff. There's a lot of ideas and a lot of things being worked on, but we're not quite there yet. And so there's a few bottlenecks technologically. There's a lot of practical issues, and I'm not making any excuses for being slow about this. I'm as someone who is very much not happy about climate change. Yeah, like that's kind of the it's kind of the state of things. We can desalinate water. The problem is we have storage and shipment of desalinated water. Unfortunately, it's not really that easy. I thought water desalination was such an easy, obvious solution, but I mean, I've looked into a lot of stuff about that, and it seems like there's a lot of reasons why that's not as obvious as a solution as you'd think. Apparently, like, desalinating water with the sun, for example, is nowhere near as efficient as you think. Like, water evaporation does not happen at that fast of a rate to make it a super efficient way to, like, get fresh water or to get, like, a lot of salt. It's done, but it's not done at a large scale because desal is just not... It's not super efficient, unfortunately. The best way to desalinate water, by the way, is to use energy. Exactly. Dead Meat Zukulik actually, just said it there. It costs way more energy to produce the water through desalination than other methods. And so, yeah. Salt is hard to store? Is it really? I guess so. I mean, I've just seen places where they harvest salt and it's just in giant piles in the middle of a field, but maybe it is hard to store. I don't know. Yeah, we can't just make batteries bigger, too, for some reason. Yeah. They just put the salt back in the ocean? Yeah, I guess they could do that, but wouldn't that eventually increase the ocean salinity too much? I'm not a climate scientist, though, so why should I speak on it?
Organizations in other countries, they've also since expanded their demand.
Now, that's a great first step, but obviously, the scientific community will tell us that isn't anywhere near what we need to be, that isn't commensurate with the scale of the crisis, right? And so what we need is an international legally binding treaty to end the extraction and burning of oil, gas and coal.
Well, there was an unignorable sense.
That was attempted multiple times, by the way. It's yet to happen. And if it's going to happen, it's unfortunately going to be a step-by-step process. Like, as much as I would love for us to overnight drop and ban the use of fossil fuels, it's just not going to happen. Like, it doesn't matter how much you protest. It's not possible. Like, it's not practically possible. And that's kind of one of the things that's so frustrating about the situation in general, but also people like this, is that a lot of them believe that it is just the stubbornness of people in power that keeps particular change. And a lot of the times it is the stubbornness of people in power that keeps good changes from happening. But this is not necessarily one of them. Like, we're actually at a point where public popularity for, like, climate change, like, addressing, policy and moves is pretty popular. A lot of our politicians, including our currently elected government in both the UK and the US, believe in climate change and are fighting it more than any administration before. It really does seem like there's not much faster that we can go. We're going pretty fast. Yeah, and on top of that, China is also a big polluter too, so they've got to agree to some kind of agreement that they're not going to agree to if it has any chance of stymieing their massive, exponential growth in the market. China has the fastest rate of new millionaires of any country in the world. It's not in any way communist. It's a heavily, heavily market-oriented country. And in fact, their market is growing extremely fast, and they're putting a lot of money and effort into growing their market and making more millionaires. Not because they want their people to be successful and wealthy, but because they want there to be a massive and thriving industry in China. They're rapidly, rapidly moving in that direction. And it's working out pretty well for them. In fact, I believe China is the #1 user of steel and concrete in the entire world. Simply because they are building so much. The fishing industry does an insane amount of polluting, yep. And destruction of the ocean, too, with dragnetting and stuff, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the pollution stuff and fossil fuel emissions are only one part of climate change and, like, the human impact on the world. Even if we end the carbon emissions now, like, literally zero them today or negative them today, there's still countless other ways in which we're destroying the planet that we have to address. It's not just carbon. It's not just the rising temperatures. We're destroying the planet in numerous different ways. Anyway, with all that said, I think that's about all I have for this segment. That's about as much as I can steelman Just Stop Oil, but I do feel that I did a decent job steelmanning them and representing their positions, but I nonetheless disagree with them. And I'm glad to see that, at least more than last time I talked about Just Stop Oil, I see a lot more people in chat being like, oh, yeah, this is pretty cringe. But yeah. With that said, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like. Every thumbs up goes a long way to help the channel and the algorithm, boosting my videos and getting them in the recommended of more new people, so it really does help a lot, as does commenting down below. Plus, I get to read your nice comments. I like doing that. And consider subscribing and ringing the bell icon to turn on all notifications so that YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video in the future. And consider following my social medias, which are all linked down below in the description, if you want to see my stuff on other platforms. And consider joining my fan Discord, also linked down below, if you want to join the main hub of my community and fan base, and you don't want to miss any of the announcements I make for my new uploads and streams, because that is the best way to be told. It really is. Like, my Discord doesn't generally bug out when I make an announcement, but YouTube will not tell you when I go live sometimes. But with that said, if you enjoyed this segment, I really appreciate you being here. If you want to support me directly financially, you got the money for it and you feel like it, consider donating to help keep the lights on over here at Xander Hall Studio with a donation on my website or a gifted sub, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me financially through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or buying merch with the Streamlabs link down below. But regardless of how you support the stream, thank you so much, even if you just watched, and have a good one. I do hope to see you again.